Okay, today we're doing lesson 5.2 in math, model division of decimals by whole numbers. Our essential question today is how can you use a model to divide a decimal by whole numbers? Okay, so the first thing we have is we have our little decimal models, our graph paper, and we have a colored pencil. So Angela has enough wood to make a picture frame with a perimeter of 2 4/10 meters. She wants the frame to be a square. What will the length of each side of the frame be? What is the perimeter of something?
The outside.
The outside, if we were to measure the outside. So on your little graph papers that you have, you're supposed to shade 2 4/10. So how many whole little squares are you going to shade?
2.
2. Shade 2 whole squares. And how many tenths or columns are you going to shade on the other one? 4. Okay? So please shade them. So when you shaded your model, it should have looked something like this. And we went ahead and cut these 4 apart. So now let's go back. It says you need to share your model among how many equal groups? What does it say? She wants the frame to be square. Well, how many sides would a square frame have?
4.
4. So she needs to share that 2 4/10 meters among 4 equal groups, or in this case, in 4 equal sides. Since 2 wholes cannot be shared among 4 groups without regrouping, cut your model apart to show the tenths. There are now blank tenths. So go ahead now and cut your large squares into the tenth. So if you're doing this lesson at home and watching the recording, you need to find something and make some 10 by 10 squares so that you have something to cut apart. So since 2 wholes cannot be shared among 4 groups without regrouping, cut your model apart to show the tenths. There are now how many tenths? 24. Share the tenths equally among groups. There are how many ones? Do we have any whole 1 squares anymore?
No.
No. Okay, so go ahead and divide your tenths equally among those 4. So now in our little circle that we did, we have no ones, but how many tenths in each one? 6. Write a decimal from the amount in each group. So we have 0 ones and 6 tenths. Use your model to complete the number sentence. 2 4/10 divided by 4 is, divided by 4 is
0.6.
tenths. So the length of each side of the frame will be 6/10 meters. In the blue box up here is the draw the conclusion questions. It says explain why you need to cut apart the model in step C. Why did we need to cut apart the model in step C?
Because we couldn't put 2 holes into 4
Right.
equal
We
groups.
couldn't share 2 wholes in 4 equal groups. And then explain how your model would be different if the perimeter were 4 8/10 meters. Would you need to cut apart your holes if it was 4 8/10 meters? No, because you'd have a hole to share with each group. Okay, I'm going to go to a blank page and put these questions and answers up for you. Okay, so on the draw the conclusion at the bottom of the page, explain why you needed to cut apart the model in step C. Because we had 2 holes and we couldn't share 2 holes among 4 groups. So in a sentence it might sound like I could not share the 2 holes among the 4 groups, but I could regroup and share the 24 tenths. So when I cut that apart into my tenths, I ended up with 24 tenths, and then I could share them with the 4 groups. Now in number 2, it says, explain how your model would be different if the perimeter were 4 8/10 meters. I would not need to cut the 4 holes into 40 tenths because I could put 1 hole in each of my 4 spots. So each group of 4 groups would contain 1 hole and 2 tenths. Okay, here we are on page 206. We have a new problem to solve. And it says, remember that a flat, these are the flats, represent 1. A long represents tenths. And a small cube represents 1/100. Kyle has a roll of ribbon that is 3 21/100 yards long. He cuts the ribbon into 3 equal lengths. How long is each piece of ribbon? You can use base 10 blocks to model division of a decimal by a whole number. Divide 3 21/100 divided by 3. Use base 10 blocks to show there are how many ones? Now what's in the ones place?
3.
3. How many tenths?
2.
And how many hundredths? Okay, you need to model that for me.
I do want the day.
Okay, so we have modeled our 3 21/100. Now, step 2, share the ones. How many equal groups do we need to put this into?
3.
3. Share an equal number of ones among 3 groups. There is blank ones shared in each group and 0 ones left over. So how many ones would be shared in each group if I divided this into 3 groups? 1. And how many ones would be left over? 0. So please write that in. There is 1 and 0 ones left over. Okay? Step 3. So here's our 3 groups, 1, 2, 3. Now it said there are blank tenths to share among each group and blank tenths left over. Are there enough tenths to share among the groups?
No.
No. So there are 0 tenths and 0 tenths left over because we can't share them. Okay? So what are we going to do with those tenths?
Make those hundreds.
Make them into hundredths. So we can't share those tenths, so we're going to have to break them apart into 1. So take your longs and trade them each in for 10 ones. How many then are 10 hundredths, the little cubes? So how many little cubes are we going to have, or how many hundredths are we going to have? 21 plus the original one that we started with. So now we have 21 hundredths. Share the hundredths. Share the 21 hundredths equally among 3 groups. There are blank hundredths shared in each group. So how many hundredths are we going to have in each group? What times 3 is 21? 7 hundredths shared in each group. And are there any hundredths left over? No. So each piece of ribbon is 1 7/7 yard long. Okay, now we're on share and show at the top of page 207. It says use the model to complete the number sentence. 1 6/10 divided by 4. If I had 1 whole, could I divide that among 4 groups? Did I have 4 holes to put in each group? I did. If I have 1 whole square, if I have 1 6/10, I can have 1 whole, and I'm going to divide it among 4 groups. I have 4 ones to move down and put in each group.
No.
Can I move this one whole? Yes or no?
No.
No, why not?
Because
I only have one. If I want to move the whole thing, I can't put it in 4 different places, right? It's no different than what we did with our little circle mat earlier when we had the 2 holes. We couldn't take those 2 holes and make them go into 4 different places, right? So what are we going to need to do with this model? What are we going to do with this? This does look different. This is your answer. How did they get it so there were 4 tenths in each circle? Why do they have 4 circles?
Because you're dividing it by 4.
You're dividing it into 4 equal groups. Now, how did they get it into 4 circles?
They divided their 100
There.
block, and they put it as 10 tenths.
So they broke that ones block into tenths. Then they could share those tenths. Okay? So if I had that ones block and I made it into 10 tenths, and I had 6 tenths from my 1 6 tenths, I could group these into groups of 4. Unless you've drawn one too many. There's my groups of 4, just like they have groups of 4. So if I have 1 6 tenths divided by 4, what's my answer? What's in one of these circles? 4 tenths.
Teachers, would you?
Okay, so if we're going to model 1 8 tenths here, and we have to divide it, and we have to get 8 tenths. Okay, there are no hundredths, so I don't have to worry about my block, but I've got to divide this into 3 equal groups. So I am going to have to take this hundredths and break it down into tenths. So I'm going to move it over here out of my way, and I'm going to put 10 tenths out here. Okay, now we have to have 3 groups. So I know that there are 9 threes in each group. So I'm going to circle groups of 9. So each group is 9 tenths.